Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla, here to talk to you today about the Akrapovic Racing GP exhaust for the Yamaha XSR. You should be looking into an Akrapovic Racing GP exhaust for your Yamaha XSR for a couple reasons. If you're looking for a little better sound and you want a little bit more performance, and you might also be looking to get away from that underbelly muffler look. I know that can be kind of polarizing for some people. Now, this is currently available for all iterations of the XSR900 right now. However, I would encourage you, again, go ahead, use the bike finder. Who knows, long after this video is made, they may have some different iterations of this bike. But for now, if you're on an XSR900, Akrapovic has got you covered. Installation on this isn't too awful bad. I'm going to call it 2 beards on our beard scale of difficulty. Should be pretty easy for most of you guys who have basic hand tools. There were a couple snafus we ran into. I'm going to get into that just a little bit in the installation section. We can cover that a little bit more thoroughly. But for now, let me introduce you to the exhaust. Now here at RevZilla, Yamaha actually gave us an XSR900. We had it for quite a while. While we had it, Akrapovic actually gave us a pre-production version of this exhaust. So we were able to spend a little bit of time with both the bike and the exhaust, and we learned a few things about them. So I'd encourage you at this point, if you haven't watched our Akrapovic overview, check it out. We're going to kind of explain the line, some of their construction techniques, some of what makes Akrapovic special, and what really makes it the creme de la creme of exhaust. But for those of you who didn't catch that, you should know that this thing is constructed of stainless headers, and then we've got the combination of a titanium muffler. That is what the racing line in Akrapovic is all about. Now we had this thing, we got this onto the motorcycle, and I did notice a couple things. I actually want to kick off kind of with aesthetics on here. Normally that's not my first stopping point for an exhaust, but a couple things do deserve to be talked about. As I had mentioned in the intro here, we do actually have a different style of exhaust. I think if you have an XSR, you're checking them out, almost everything you're going to see is going to be an underbelly style exhaust. If you want to move away from that style though, options are a little bit thin. So this thing kind of does already stand out from the crowd because it is a high mount exhaust. Now I will say aesthetically that leaves me with 1 or 2 questions. The XSR900 obviously is a retro style bike. I think Yamaha was sort of pulling from some of their 70s triple heritage there. Now I do think of this exhaust as also a retro style exhaust, but to me this brings me back kind of to the 2000s rather than the 1970s. I'm not really sure if I think the 2 timelines jive, but again, a high mount exhaust is something a little bit different for the XSR. Now from there, when we're talking aesthetics too, one of the things I did like that Akrapovic did here, you'll notice we have this circular pattern, this motif run throughout the exhaust. However, I don't know if maybe it's just a little bit too much. It blends in well with the already kind of circular industrial look Yamaha uses on the bike, but we do have an awful lot of circles going on here, especially when you factor into some of the existing Yamaha trim in the same area. Now staying on those heat shields too, another tiny criticism I had is probably the passenger heel guard here. You can see this piece on here is perfectly functional, works absolutely fantastically, but I do have to say I would have preferred seeing this maybe integrated into 1 or 2 of these other heat shields, maybe even one big one over here. For me that was a little bit of a whiff. Other than that though, I gotta say, it was mostly positive things about this exhaust. So we mentioned too, this being sort of the only thing on the market that, that offers a different look than that underbelly look. One of the other things I think that also deserves to be mentioned is this also allows the use of an aftermarket center stand. I think that's really important. We had an SW Motec unit fitted up to our motorcycle, especially with exhausts that run underneath the belly of the motorcycle. It can be a little bit difficult to find something that will jive with a center stand. When you consider how useful they are, I know it's a big sacrifice for a lot of people. For me though, the real game changer on this exhaust is the fact that this can be fitted with an optional catalytic converter. I think that's absolutely killer. Almost every exhaust in the range requires you to drop your catalytic converter. Again, because this doesn't have a separate slip-on and header setup, if you're looking for an exhaust on an XSR, you're forced into doing a full system exhaust, and almost everything on the market forces you into dumping your catalytic converter. If you want to stay legal, you want to stay compliant, having a cat is necessary. Kudos to Akrapovic for coming out with an exhaust that can be fitted with a cat. I think that's super important. So the other thing I kind of dug about this too, despite the fact that we added almost 18 more inches of pipe onto this exhaust, we dropped 2.6 pounds over the factory system. It's a fairly significant weight loss, again, considering that we actually made the exhaust just a little bit longer. Now when it comes to installation on this puppy, like I mentioned, 2 beards. So this isn't too far off from your standard full system exhaust install. If you've done one before, it's not a big deal. You do want to make sure you have a set of spare gaskets handy. It's the one piece that Akrapovic does not put in the box for you. The installation was reasonably straightforward, though. The one thing I will notice is there is one trim piece on this motorcycle that does have to be drilled in order to use this thing. Another quick fitment note too you'll want to pay a little bit of heed to is this is not particularly good at playing with the factory turn signals. Everything will bolt up, but it is possible for those turn signals to make contact with the exhaust canister. You may cause a little bit of damage to your factory turn signals if you are going to run those. I assume most of you guys, again, are going to be cleaning up that huge dirt bike you looking rear end. You're probably going to jettison the stock signals anyway, but still it does bear just a little bit of mention. Other than that though, pretty standard installation. Standard hand tools will see you through the job. It's not too fiddly at all. Now this is where, again, I'm going to take a little bit of a different look on things than Akrapovic is. Akrapovic makes all of their exhausts to work bolt-in factory, no tuning or modification necessary. However, we do know that especially on a full system exhaust, you can get more out of the bike and more out of the exhaust with a retune. So while Akrapovic does state that you do not need to retune or to use this, I would say most of you are probably going to be in good shape. If you do, you're probably going to pick up a few more ponies. As nice as this exhaust is, why not let it do its job correctly? All in all, I'm not entirely certain I'd stick one of these onto the XSR900 if I had one in my garage, but you certainly can't fault the innovation here, as well as how beautifully this exhaust is made. So for that reason, I certainly wouldn't look at somebody cross-eyed if I saw one on their bike. Don't take my word for it though, click that info button, see what some other riders who are rolling around on an XSR900 have to say about their Acra system. Of course, if you need a little bit more individualized help, we can get with you. Get in touch with one of our gear geeks, 877-792-9455 by phone. Of course, you can always drop us an email too, cs@revzilla.com. I'm Lemmy, I'm out of here.